Hey everybody, good evening. Just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to be here tonight. Just want to introduce myself. My name is Reagan Carmichael. I'm the athletic coordinator here at Stevenson. I'm also the varsity girls basketball coach. I do help a lot with athletes that are interested in playing the collegiate sport. So if you have any questions, you can always come and find me. My office is in 5116, which is right outside the beautiful PWC. So we're really thrilled. We're so thrilled to have Honest Game here today to present to you. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Courtney Sacaleras from Honest Game.
We're going to use the mic because we're also recording, I think, for anyone that's not here, so it'll just like project a little bit better. Thanks for coming tonight. Thanks to Reagan and Trish for hosting me. So really quickly, we have a lot of information, so with our small group, please ask questions as we come to something. If it's something that you are like, that's what I came to hear, that's what I need to know. So we're going to kind of do a lot of information, some talk about how this works here at your school, and then a little bit about our software and how it assists your student in the academic piece of college athletics. So I have to share, per my boss's, like this little biography, I guess. But I had an opportunity to work with Trish for a very good amount of years when I was an athletic administrator at Park River Forest. And I was just sharing with another family. I did have an opportunity to be a Division I athlete many moons ago. And we used this resource at Oak Park River Forest for student athletes. And then I came over to Honest Game a little over 3 years ago, and we work with schools across the country. So I'm able to sort of educate, come into athletic departments that have outstanding resources and people right at your fingertips and partner with them and share this information with you. So a little bit about what tonight is like, hopefully you get a takeaway. We're going to talk really quickly what is academic eligibility, making sure everyone understands what it is. We are then going to talk through what the school does to support eligibility for the NCAA. We'll make sure that you know where, if you haven't already registered with NCAA, what you need to do tonight when you're leaving. Then we're going to do a little bit about rules with college recruiting. There's been a couple big changes, so we're going to talk about what's new in terms of no more national letter of intent. It's now called grant and aid. We'll focus on that for a minute. And then we're going to share how we coordinate and how Reagan sort of implements this in your school with your student athletes and with you who are here as student athletes. And then the last piece is just understanding a little bit more about the financial piece of NCAA. All right, so first and foremost, this is kind of the piece that we want to make sure you understand is academic eligibility across our country is a big problem with access to college sports. Obviously, you're at a very well-resourced school that not only updates their portal pretty frequently, but also is consistently knowing what to offer so that you are registered in core classes. But this is important to understand, like this is kind of that first step to college athletics does have to do with academics. The biggest piece that we exist, and the reason we exist, is we don't want to have any school partner, any athlete have any surprises with their setup for academic success. I think a lot of you have probably seen sometimes in media or sometimes highlighted a really talented kid and then they end up not going anywhere or maybe going to a different level. A lot of that has to do with their academic standing. Okay, so this is total basic framework that you see on the screen. This is your NCAA core GPA, not your school GPA, so we're putting on our NCAA GPA hat. Division I, Division II, Division III. So you can see the standards, minimum standards for all three divisions. In Division III, obviously there are no NCAA eligibility requirements, right? It's just straight admissibility to the institution. And this is your NCAA core. So in certain sports, obviously there's typically a lot of high achieving students in other sports. It is common to not have kids be full qualifiers, but knowing what your NCAA core is in your recruiting process is very helpful. And we'll kind of talk about how you can see that on your Honest Game report. Different than your school GPA, that's my highlight there. So just some updates about the NCAA. So if you did, I should have asked this, I was asking somebody, raise your hand if you are a coach, played in college at any level, or have another sibling or child that has done that. Okay, so the reason I always say raise your hand is because we are a community, right? So it is important that someone in your space may have coached a number of college athletes, may have gone through this process themselves, doesn't matter when it happened, has another child that went through it, it's a good resource, right? Although lots of things change, there's still some core things that haven't changed. So anyway, as of August 1st, 2024, program courses that are taken outside of school, a little bit of that process has changed, and we obviously work with Stevenson to sort that out if that's something that your student has an opportunity or needs to do. There is no more COVID waivers. So any student athlete, any grade COVID waivers, that has totally lapsed. So that is back to just a regular cycle. There is an increased account fee for registration accounts. They're now $100, and amateurism only is $70. Okay, so how do I get to that core GPA? I think I heard Reagan say earlier, and I do know from working with your counselors, you guys have like 4,500 classes you could take at the school. So a lot of those are obviously elective or potentially, career preparatory classes. These are core classes as listed and defined by the NCAA. So as you can see up there, there really isn't like your electives, right? Your entrepreneurship, your culinary arts, physical education, driver's education, all these graduation requirements are never going to land in any of those core subject areas. So our role at Honest Game with the counselors is when we see all the data from your student transcripts, if we see any new courses, if we see a new honors version of a course, a new AP version of a course, which I think last year we added 2 AP versions of the course you guys taught, we are making sure that those are listed on the portal for core course approval so you can get credit for those. Okay, screen shows 2 separate GPAs. Almost all of our students in this room will have 2 different GPAs. One will be your NCAA, one will be your school. It's super important, especially with some of you in here with amazing grades, you gotta know both, right? Once I make that 2.3, I'm good for NCAA, but the school GPA is gonna be a little bit different, right? If you are going to, I think one of the military academies, one of our young men here was talking about that. If you're going to an Ivy, right, those are gonna be a little bit different for you in terms of needing that, but knowing that they're gonna be different and how to talk about them with college coaches is super important. Okay, just defining in both Division I and Division II the definitions of what full qualifier, redshirt, and non-qualifier are. Full qualifier, obviously, I can take all of my athletic grade aid, I can play my first year, I can compete, I can do everything. If I fall between a 2.0 and a 2.3, I will be listed and certified as an academic redshirt. I can still take my scholarship, I can still practice with my team. Depending on travel requirements at different institutions, you may even travel with the team, but you will not compete in your first year of enrollment. And then in the Division I space, you can be deemed a non-qualifier if you do not meet 10.7 or if you are below a 2.0. In Division II, there's same definitions for full and partial. There is no non-qualifiers in the Division II space. So if you are a partial qualifier, anything below that 2.2, you're just deemed a partial qualifier, which is for some kids, again, I can only share my experience. At Oak Park, we had several very talented kids in a few years of sequence of wrestlers, and one of them was, one of the, he was very highly recruited, Division I. He was a non-qualifier, he didn't meet 10.7. So, Division II is where he went, won a national championship, and then transferred to Division I. So it is an option if that is ever a case that a student is in. So some schools that's more prevalent. I don't think that's been a case that we've talked about yet here, but just so you know. All right, early qualifier. Early qualifier is a standard I think we've seen a number of your students meet, okay? What that means is I have a 3.0 or higher at the conclusion. You can see the conclusion up here after 6 semesters, right? You're basically, they're not looking at your transcripts anymore. Okay, you'll be certified as a full qualifier. In your senior year, you can take whatever you need to take, which opens up some kids to do different types of studies if they're doing some of those electives. Division II, there's also early qualifier, it's just a little bit lower, it's a 2.5. Okay, 10.7 rule. This is, I think, the most important one for Division I bound kids. Your GPA can be on track, right? If your credits are not on track and you do not complete 10 of your 16 core before you begin your 7th semester, you are deemed a non-qualifier. There's no going back. So if I meet 10.7 and I'm not at my 2.3, great. We have all kinds of time senior year, even in the summer, to get that sorted out. But if you don't meet that initially, you will be deemed a non-qualifier. In our reporting, obviously, that'll show what that looks like, but very, very important to know. I know we have some coaches in this space that sometimes is a big, piece that people miss, which is why it's important to kind of track it, because you can always add in some summer school there after junior year. Okay, education impact disability, what the NCAA refers to as an EID. So if you have a registered IEP plan or a 504 plan, you can register that when you are getting your certification count with the NCAA. You're going to submit that paperwork, they're going to approve it, and essentially there's two pieces to that. One, college coaches cannot see it on the other side. So if they add you to an IRL, they cannot see that Reagan is a student that has an IEP or 504 unless she gives them permission. A lot of times, one, it's helpful as a student athlete and parents to know what that school may offer if you have always had some of those learning structures in place. Also for some students, if you have an approved EID, you get 3 additional courses in the summer before enrollment if you're needing to catch up on work, right? Could be anything. You could have been out of school, you could have had to take a semester off, you get 3 additional courses in the summer. A student athlete without that only gets 1. So a lot of times families are unaware of this. Most of the time it's brought to the attention by a coach that's recruiting a kid, that's looking at the classes, or wondering if there's room for extra work to get the GPA up. In Division II, you can take unlimited number of courses after you graduate, so it's still important that you process it in the event that a Division I school is where you're looking, but just to know, Division II, you can take unlimited after graduation. Okay, NAIA. Did anyone go to an NAIA school? I like to ask that. I think you guys have had some kids that have gone to NAIA, yes. Okay. This is a separate governing body than the NCAA. There's a lot of conferences. We're going to show a map in a second. So I always say if you're getting an email or a phone call from an NAIA school, call them back, see what they're talking about, see where the school is, maybe surprised at where it is. They offer athletic scholarships, right? There's about over $800 million available in their entire sort of governing body, and this is requirements. A little different from the NCAA, it's just a straight school GPA. So 2.3 or higher. If you don't meet it, you have to meet 2 of the requirements there on the screen. And then here's the map of those schools and those conferences. So sometimes for us Chicago folks, it's nice to see California and Florida and Texas, maybe not Florida, but Texas in there for some warmth. They also have pretty much no recruiting rules. You could get a call from an NAIA school as a freshman. So if one of those schools is showing interest, or you have someone that you know that's went to there, I think it's great to explore. I didn't know a ton about NAIA when I was at Oak Park until about maybe 7 years ago, and we started having an influx of our football players go to NAIA schools. So I think it's just something I know Reagan's exploring that with her student athletes, but wanted to show the map. Okay, junior colleges. Again, this is also sort of a space that is a little bit newer, and I want to say more accepted, but it can be part of a journey for a student athlete for some specific sports. Junior college, basically, admission and their standards are a high school diploma, okay, or equivalency of a GED. The most important part about junior colleges is your initial eligibility. So if I enroll in a junior college and I'm playing softball and I'm a full qualifier, I can stay there for 1 semester, or my season will be in the spring, 1 year, and then I can go into the transfer portal. If I am a non-qualifier, I have to graduate from the junior college. So I think junior college before had a little bit of a aura around that it was for kids who weren't as talented or someone that wasn't ready, and really for some kids it's actually a great fit. I'm sure you guys have some great success stories from my time at Oak Park of kids in the basketball space and in the baseball and softball space that this was a great, great part of their journey. Okay, we're not gonna go through this, don't get scared. I just keep this in there, one, so that Reagan has access to this, because this summer, we did have a former Stevenson athlete come back to the table who was at a junior college and who was transferring and looking to go on the portal and kind of needed some assistance and had to do something back with the NCAA. So just kind of to show you as student athletes and parents, this is available to you when you're in that, if that's something you decide to do and you get confused about the transfer rules, we will always be available, and Stevenson will be equipped with the rules to help as well. Okay, so this is like your homework for my student athletes here. Raise your hand if you already have your NCAA ID. 1, It's okay if you don't. Okay, so I know it's part of Reagan's checklist, but this is just a kind of a homework assignment. So we're gonna just look at those screenshots of, oh, I like to show this just because it kind of shows you sort of all the divisions and the number of schools. So just kind of take a peek at it for a moment because it's pretty vast. And scholarship is offered in all of those spaces for athletics except for Division III. Okay, screenshot on the left, NCAA Eligibility Center, NAIA on the right. Both, you obviously just go right to those websites and you can register for that. And then, and I know that's one of our checklist items as well. And in terms of what type of account do you need? We are always going to recommend academic and amateurism certification account. That is the paid account with the NCAA. If you do not have a paid account, that is what you need to take an official visit to be put on an IRL and to be certified. You can absolutely create a free profile page. It will be deleted after 90 days if you don't upgrade. So sometimes I think it's just easier, and we recommend just start with the certification. The bottom one is, if you know you're most likely going to be at a D3 school, that is your space, that is who you're talking to, that's exactly where you're going. You just have to do the amateurism only certification account. Okay, so what do you need when you're registering, just as a kind of a heads up? Valid email address. I know we want to think you're using your school email. I doubt that's what any of our students are using. So one that you check and that you have access to. You need your basic education history. If you've ever attended another high school besides Stevenson, you need to have that information and attendance dates. And then sport participation history. This sometimes trips up families though, that you're going to just list teams outside of high school that you've played on. Unless you are getting paid to play for one of those clubs, you really are just filling out a participation background. And then last is that payment. So in order to check out, you will need payment on site. And if you are a student that potentially has any kind of fee waiver here for either testing, for school fees, for anything that's related around meals, you can have a counselor submit a fee waiver for you. Okay, we can skip this one. Okay, let's just do a little bit, we by no means are a recruiting service. The pieces that you kind of work with internally, right, is how you guys start finding your schools. And some of that is also happening in your high school teams, in your club teams. This is really just basic framework for some rules and understanding. So essentially we want to know kind of three things that are happening. One, the academic conversation is much more important than I think a lot of families and kids need to know. So using your academic background, what you are as a student, who you are, what you want to study, and your actual grades is a huge piece of the recruiting process, right? Showcasing that and letting college coaches know where you stand. Second is, it's important to know the recruiting calendar for your particular sport. So basketball coach here, she kind of knows sort of when those periods are, because that is when coaches are going to be at your showcases, potentially calling, emailing. So you want to make sure some of that is an understanding that you have. And then NIL is important to just know. Obviously you can accept that in Illinois as a high school athlete, but it may come up in conversation when you're talking to college coaches. Okay, so in that academic conversation, this is for students and parents, but just a little bit deeper dive in how you would sort of showcase this. One, you want to make sure you're sharing your NCAA GPA. I'm going to be a full qualifier. I am set up for success that way. Two, what is your GPA? How high is it? Are you taking APs? What does that look like for you? And then also, this bottom one, college coaches advocating for their recruits. So even though I'm a full qualifier and I'm gonna go play basketball at Northwestern, maybe my GPA is a little bit lower than a student athlete that they would maybe admit, okay? Like a regular student versus student athlete. Those coaches are able to talk to admission about those particular students. So it's very important that you talk about where you're at. Even classes you're planning to take is very helpful for them, right? So different universities are going to have their NCAA requirements, which everyone has, and then their admissibility. And their admissibility is definitely different for different sports. Okay, this is going to be just a quick checklist. It's also available in your Honest Game dashboard. It's pretty much just a condensed version of the NCAA's long, like 50-page guide, so that it's something you can kind of have at home in your recruiting calendar or your notebook or all the things you're taking notes with Reagan, like whatever that looks like. This just kind of helps you know where you're you're at and what you need to do. And if you're starting late, like if you're a junior right now, not a big deal. We're just gonna work backwards and make sure we have what we need. Okay, so the recruiting calendar is gonna be different for each sport, and it is constantly changing. The biggest changes, I think, most of it are for basketball, just so you know, for men's and women's. And the basic 3 rules for everyone to understand is in Division I, Division II, the rules are gonna be based on your year in school, your sport, right? And at that time of year, okay? So they're listed sport specific. I know that like men's soccer, some of them, women's field hockey, like they're just considered other sports. So if it's not listed by name, you're gonna see it under other sports. Okay, so live periods, right, evaluation periods, you can kind of see on the screen and just kind of read those quickly what those look like. Those are basically times when coaches are watching and can watch you play in live tournaments, in live showcases. And a lot of times, we know there are showcases timed throughout the year. I'm looking at my Feel Like a Family who was here earlier. You're gonna go to a tournament around Thanksgiving because it's a live period, right? So that is why all the coaches are on the sidelines watching you play. For other sports, like basketball, live periods are mostly in the summer, in June, July, during the team circuits, right? So each sport has kind of that individual time. For our football athletes and basketball athletes, a lot happens still in the high school space. So there's probably some people stopping in the athletic office during that season time in November and December to see kids in person. So what can you do? I like to focus on this side for student athletes. What can you do during that period? One, you can always send out emails. You can always interact. Sometimes they just can't interact back with you. You can keep doing your research. You can kind of know about the school. Keep preparing very personal emails for them. And then they obviously can comment and like on your posts. They can email you back. I know you guys do a really good job here about social media, but understanding what those periods are and what they can do is helpful. Because sometimes you're like, I went to the showcase, my emails, no one called me back, I'm not doing anything. Just check the calendar, because sometimes that is the reason why there's not a lot of activity. Keep going, right? Let's go to quiet period. So quiet period is just every sport is going to have a quiet or dead period where essentially they cannot visit kids, they can't watch kids in person. Again, that's a context around for our travel kids near some of those tournaments. Some of those tournaments you're just going to play in with your team and it's an experience, but knowing if that's a dead period, you're like, wait, I thought I was coming to be evaluated and no one's here. It's probably most likely right in a quiet or dead period. Okay, keep going. All right, Division III schools. Pretty much not a lot of rules. They can contact, they can email, they can call, which again, I think is very, very helpful, and you should never not return a phone call, an email from any school, any person, because one, you have no idea where they may be going next, right? They may recruit you at one school, but go to another school. So it's also really good practice, right? Like you may be super nervous, and then another school calls that you're really excited about, but you had been practicing with some of these schools. And official visits can start in the January of junior year for D3 schools. Same thing with NAI schools. There is no recruiting calendar restrictions at all. So we also share that with coaches when we're talking. Sometimes we're like, wait, so-and-so's getting calls, or like a freshman. Because it could be from NAI, right, or junior college, or Division III. Same thing with junior colleges. Obviously they can recruit, they can offer official visits, all those things can happen. They can pay for you to be on campus. They can just not do those official visits till you're a junior. Okay, left-hand side, right-hand side, official visits on the left, unofficials on the right. Basically, you're seeing all the things that a school, when you're on an official visit, is paying for, okay? On the right is unofficial. Those are the things that they are not gonna pay for, but can still happen. So the old rule used to be 5 official visits. It is unlimited now. Okay, so you can take as many visits as you would like. You want to take 25 official visits, have a party, go for it, which is great to encourage kids to visit as many schools as possible. You can actually only go on 1 official visit unless you're on the sport of basketball and there's a coaching change. You can revisit the school once the change has been made. Next one. Okay, college ID and summer camps. I'm sure some of you have already started this or attended or seen these. So most schools have ID camps throughout the year, right? Sometimes those are in winter, sometimes they're in spring, depending on the sport. and most of them have a summer camp in the summer. Those are a great opportunity to see the campus, be with the coaching staff, what is their style, right? Like how do they coach? See some of the players on the team, right? Are those people that you would envision spending a lot of time with, or what's the culture of the team? And most of the time they are small groups. So they can't limit participation, but they can limit the number. So it is sometimes a great opportunity to go somewhere and play for a few days where it is a focus. They also can invite you to an ID camp. You also, if you're on a recruiting questionnaire list from that university, you might get invited, but they just can't pay for you. Any questions about the college ID or summer camp? Sometimes people are like understanding what those are. Okay, good. All right, so this is really quickly, bear with me as we get through some of the thick of this. This is what is sort of changing in terms of terminology about national letter of intent. So essentially, what has been effective immediately, we are really grateful that we have a partnership with the major governing bodies, and so we meet with the NCAA pretty regularly to walk through their new rule changes so that when we communicate them with our school partners and with them, we sort of share the right information. So you're seeing national letter of intent and athletic grant and aid. What they're moving to is athletic grant and aid only. Okay, so there used to be when you signed 2 pieces of paper. One was from the institution, the NLI institution, and then the university that you're attending. Now it will just be an athletic grant and aid from the direct university that you'll be attending and participating at. So what does that really mean? Okay, so as you read on the screen, essentially, it's still a contract. It's still legally binding, okay? It still specifies very specifically what your athletic scholarship is, right? A little part of this is they're trying to get rid of NLI and NIL. People get those confused because they're 2 acronyms, they're really close together. Students, once you sign that, similar to a letter, there's no more recruiting, okay? Except, if I sign a letter right now with the University of Michigan, but Harvard or a military academy wants to continue to recruit me, I may still talk to those schools if I wish, because they do not offer grant and aids. Walk-ons, recruited walk-ons, non-scholarship students do not sign. Obviously in signing ceremonies, we're still, as a school, you guys are still honoring them. All that's wonderful, but you're not actually signing anything. And students who sign commitment letters without athletic grants, obviously are not guaranteed anything from that school. Okay, the dates have not changed. So as you sort of prepare for your sport, if you are a senior, dates have not changed for this year. They're telling us that those dates probably in the near future for the class of 2025 and 26 enrollment will most likely change, but for this year they do not change. Okay, so just kind of things to watch out for. So when you used to sign an letter of intent, if you wanted a release from that or you wanted to not go back to that school, you had to go to that office and go through a process. Now you are just going to be with the institution that you sign in. So making sure that the conditions you're signing for are what you agree upon. Reagan and I could both be being recruited. I would obviously not be playing Division I basketball, but we could both be going to a school to play basketball. Her grant aid could look very, very different from mine. Everyone's may look different, and that is partially because in that grant aid you may include some NIL money or agreement. So it's important that you just walk through that if you're in that situation. Really read it, really be understanding, are they asking for community service provisions? Is it multi-year? Are they going to renew it annually? Are they going to increase it? The institution now has all those opportunities to do that for student athletes. Okay, and what are you actually signing? 99% of these are going to be electronic signatures. Some schools may still issue a paper copy, and then you will submit it. And obviously high schools are going to continue to have signing ceremonies. You guys have a wonderful one here or several here. All right, so after I sign that athletic grant and aid, a lot of times you have not maybe even applied to the school yet. That's very common. And you have to finish that. And you also have to be certified and be a full qualifier. So anything that doesn't happen as it relates to that will nullify that grant and aid, right? So if you break a team rule, you do something that they have, find disciplinary action on, if you become ineligible or if you're not admitted. Okay, I'm gonna pause and go to your stuff, and we'll come back to this piece just at the end. Okay, thank you. That's like a lot at one time and whatnot. So does anybody have questions before we go about any of that
Well, hi guys. Thank you. I know so much stuff. Thank you so much for. I learn something new every time I hear you talk. So thank you. So what a recruiting meeting might look like when you come and meet with me. The first thing I ask you to do is to fill out a Google document or a Google form rather that looks just like this. And how you get that? You can go onto our athletics page. It's under Beyond Stevenson. There's a link to that form. You can also shoot me an email. I can send that to you. The reason I ask that you guys do this is just because it gives me a great understanding of what you are looking for, right? I do a lot of work like behind the scenes to try to kind of like piece together some things that you might be, like a school you might be interested in. And if you were, for example, to only want to go to school in California and I pull all of this contact information for a school in Rhode Island, that would be unhelpful for you, right? If you have an intended major, like for example, I met with a hockey player today who feels so passionately about agriculture, and I think that's awesome. And so we siphoned our search to schools with agriculture programs, right? So this is just a way that I can help you better. And so this is always the first step in any meeting that we will have together. It kind of just gets me, it's a nice little screenshot of who you are as a student athlete. And then, awesome. The next thing I will do, I will look you up in Honest Game. And I will see where we at academically. So if you look here in this image right here, right, I will pull your core GPA, and then that's kind of where we talk a ton about what Honest Game is and how you can use it to your benefit. We go through the resource hub, the recruit assist. It's such a great resource, and things that you can also kind of look up in your account that might be really helpful. Like there's some videos, there's some blogs as parents as well. You guys can access those blogs or those videos. Like maybe you have a question about the recruiting process. Maybe your athlete is the first person in your family that will ever be playing a collegiate sport, right? This is a great resource for you. The only thing is that you have to use your student's login, so everything is connected through your student's Stevenson email. As we go through, another great screenshot here on the right-hand side, I also emphasize using this player profile. It's kind of like a resume, right? Like you're going into a job interview, these emails, this communication with coaches. It's almost like, hey, here I am, this is what I'm about. And so I really recommend athletes fill out the student-athlete profile. And then this is just an example. I'm working with a softball athlete who's looking to play some pretty competitive softball. And I don't know about you, but I forget to read and respond to text messages. And so actually I'm gonna give Lily Pearl a quick shout out. I have stolen your amazing organizer and use it every time I meet with athletes. So thanks so much, Lily. But it just keeps everything in order, right? So it walks you through, okay, what's the name of the school? Where's the location? Who is the coach, right? Who's the head coach, the assistant coaches? Maybe there's a recruiting coordinator. That's a great person to email. And then it has all of their info, and then the contact date. So when did you email them? Was there a response? And then any notes. I always like to throw in a little tidbit about that school, right? So as Courtney had said, what's really great, there's so much access to information, and there might be a coach at Northwestern that's been there for 20 years, and that's a great piece to highlight when you reach out to that coach, right? Like, I want to play for you, I want to continue your, the culture of success that you've built, but again, like those are some of the things in the notes that we like to add, so we can add those to our emails. Yeah, I think that might be all of the slides I had. But yeah, it's so fun. The recruiting process should be a really wonderful experience. And I'm here at Stevenson to help you and your athlete really get through it. I know there's a lot of info out there, and I'm really fortunate to work with someone so great like Courtney to kind of help guide that. And so if you have any questions at all, again, my name is Reagan Carmichael. You can just R-E-G-A-N, that's my first name, you can type that in. You could look me up on the website as well, the Stevenson Athletic page, But if you have any questions and you want to explore this further, I would really love to help you guys. I'm going to pass it.
Really quickly, just some more, just quick about the roster. Yeah. Thank you, Reagan. Am I going backwards, please? Yes, let's go to right here. Okay, so just understanding athletic and academic scholarships, and I think too, obviously, different schools have different personas. This is obviously a very high academic and athletic achieving school, so athletic scholarship first is obviously determined directly by the coach of the program that you're going to play, okay? We have taken out head count and equivalency sport information because that is going to change. But essentially, head count sports for men are basketball and football. For women, they are volleyball, basketball, tennis, and gymnastics. When we talk about those sports at this moment, that means if you are playing one of those sports and that is what you'll be receiving a scholarship in, you are a full scholarship athlete. Okay, they're not offering you anything less than that. They cannot. As we move into the new legislation with the NCAA, we're going to share some of the roster limitations because that is going to change. But understanding that that scholarship is based on the coach's opinion of you at the end of the day. That's how it works. For academic, it is very likely that if you are playing an equivalency sport, they're looking at those strong test scores, your strong GPA, your full qualifier. What can we give you from the institution to make up for the athletic money that we're not giving you and put together a great package? So you're going to see a lot of that, right, in equivalency sports. And sometimes you're also a really talented kid, and they're like, yeah, you're going to go to school here for free because you're so smart. So you're still going to get rostered, you're still going to be considered recruited, but that's just how they're paying for you. And again, here, this is like a little bit about, they can absolutely combine in equivalency sports, both of those athletic and academic. So what does it look like in the new model and what is going to be proposed? So essentially right now, we'll go into the next slide, which will show sort of all the increases, but like we just talked about, head count and equivalency are what they are now, and moving forward in the new model, the limits for rosters will be increased. So if we go to that one slide, here we are. Okay, so I'll use baseball as an example. Baseball's old limit was 11.7. So there's probably an average of 30 boys rostered on a men rostered on a college Division I baseball team. The new limit will be a 34 roster limit, and that institution, if given reason, can give every single one of those kids a full scholarship, right? Depends on the money they have available. So you can see that men's and women's basketball don't really change. Men's basketball goes up by 2. So some of these are pretty big jumps. You can see our field hockey player, we go from 12, right, to 27. For football, we go from 85 to 105. Track is also a huge jump, right? So people are putting together a track team with 12.6 scholarships, and probably 40 kids rostered on a Division I track team. Next page. Okay, so you can continue to see the sports here. Soccer, old limit was 9.9 for Division I, Division II, and it's going to go to 28. So those are just kind of that sort of the new, like the grant and aid, this is the new direction that they are moving in. And we will continue to share that information, obviously, with your staff here and continue to try to push it out, and you'll see it in some of the reporting. And that will also absolutely vary from institution to institution. Division III. Division III is that space where there is no athletic scholarship. However, as an athlete being recruited by a D3 school, right, to go there, you're going to have some admissibility, right? You're going to have a little bit of, that's going to help you get in. And they're going to look for those packages, whether they're need-based or academic-based, to try to get that tuition as low as possible. In NAI, they offer athletic scholarships from partial to full all the way through. Obviously, they're governed differently, but there is a lot of money in that space as well. Okay, so we always talk a little bit about, and I think you guys encompass this here, is choosing a college. So not a division, right, not a conference, but choosing a college that best fits where you're at. I think it's hard sometimes to not think our competitive softball player, like I want to play in the SEC, and for some kids that is where they will go, right? And for others, maybe they're a little bit lower, but knowing like where you may fall. Also, it's okay to be a Division I caliber kid and choose to play at a D3 school because you get to go to Tufts. Like, that's amazing. So I think it's like, that's the place that can be hard, I think, for our high school mindset and sometimes for our parent mindset. So we just always talk about choosing a college in the division and then seeing kind of the merit money and the financial aid money and the scholarship money and how it can come together, right? That's kind of the new trend. I think that people are starting to understand that if you want to have an opportunity, there's one out there for you for sure. So just sharing some data about that. Last but not least, just understanding what does the scholarship cover, can cover any of the three things you see there with check marks. And then there is also the Student Assistance Fund that is part of most Division I institutions. So that's on the next slide. Sometimes that's something to think about might be the next one. Oh no. So Student Assistance Fund I might not include in there. Could just be, if you're thinking about going to a school far away, and you're unsure maybe that is an expense or a cost that might be difficult for your family, asking a question about, do you offer a student assistance fund for all student athletes? Well, how much do you give each student a year? Is it just one time home? Is it $1,000 for a plane ticket? That is a piece sometimes of just sharing that it's available so you know to ask. I think that's it. There's some myths in here, I think, that again, part of our work with the NCAA is to like squash the myths so that you understand what you're doing. It is important to know you're always signing your scholarship, unless in your grant and aid it tells you 2 years. It's always going to potentially be an annual review, right? Also, verbal commitments, there's no coach owes you anything if you make a verbal commitment. 9 times out of 10, they will honor something like that, specifically in female sports, but it is still nothing that's binding, right? And sometimes when that happens, then you remove yourself from any other conversation. Coach is like, well, she's going there, everybody says she's going there, we're not even going to talk to her anymore, right? Or he. So knowing that there's no, real agreement with verbal commitments. Okay? And
Yep.
does anyone, I'm turning the mic off. Are we still recording, Trish? Yeah.
I'm gonna turn it off right now.
Okay.
That's good.
Does